Hello and welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast, Shaedon Sharpe Breaks the Internet edition. I'm Bill Oram, joined as always by Brenna Greene from Coin6, and for the first time by a new co-host. If you're not watching on video, one, you should be, and two, we have a new puppy in our house, Brenna.
Bill showed up a bit late to the Timbers match on Sunday, and all of us were like, "Where's Bill? Where's Bill? Bill's supposed to be here. Where's Bill?" And then you sat down and you said you made a questionable life decision, and you showed me the photo, and I said, "Everything is forgiven. You are absolutely allowed to be late."
You know, it's funny. You really can't just go look at puppies.
No.
I thought that there was a chance that we were going to be able just to go look at puppies. That was something that I thought that I would have the backbone to do, to like be the law on this. Like, as much as my wife has talked about us getting a second dog for a while to be a companion for our older golden retriever. He's not old, but he's 4. This is another little baby golden. She's 7 weeks old. And we were standing on this farm outside of Salem on Sunday morning, and I was like, you know what? I don't care. Do what you want. And so we brought this little cutie pie. I'll show her again. This little cutie pie home to our ever expanding craziness. Like, you know, I thought getting a dog during the pandemic was ludicrous. So I don't even know what 2021 Bill would think about what 2025 Bill and family are doing. And also, I know it's probably not ideal for a podcast to be able to hear a little puppy chewing so close to my microphone, but
I can't hear it at all.
It's ambient noise, and we're going to go with it. So,
okay,
if you hear some smacking and chewing, that's it. I will say, as listeners of this podcast and readers of my column know, there is nothing I love more than naming something, which is probably in addition to just the general cuteness, has been my favorite part of having a new pure puppy, like a pure, clean, like sort of clean slate. And so as we were standing there and I realized how screwed I was, there was actually a photo of me holding the puppy, and my face says, "Well, you've done it now, Bill." That's what my face says. But I looked at my wife and I said, "Fine, but I get to name her." And she agreed. So multiple days of consideration and back and forth followed. And again, like I once wrote a column with like 75 options for the WNBA team coming to Portland. And they're probably just going to be the Fire again. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be something, you know, that did not require the amount of thought and creativity I put into it, as these things typically go. Or it's going to be the Portland Women's Basketball Club or something. So we went through a lot of names. I didn't feel that creative or clever with it, though. I couldn't find anything that I thought was really creative or clever. So after much thinking, much lack of consensus in my house, I finally looked at my wife and said, "Okay, you know what? What do you want to name her?" And she said she wanted to name her Willa. So this is baby Willa.
Aw, I like the name Willa.
But I then, of course, being me, had to take it to the next level.
Of course.
So her formal name is Willamette Rose. She's our Portland puppy.
I love that.
We got our first dog when we lived in Los Angeles. We drove through the night to pick him up in St. George, Utah. I mean, it was 2021. What else did we have to do? So this little girl is our Portland puppy, the first member of our family to be born in Oregon, other than myself. And so her name will represent that. So she's here, and she's now an honorary member of this podcasting team, at least while I'm home alone with her and can't let her out of my sight for fear that she will go potty somewhere she shouldn't.
Have we gotten any mischief so far?
So far, it hasn't been bad, I would say. She has been, she's been good. I mean, she is not learning the commands as quickly as I would like her to. Like, for example, get me a beer from the fridge. She hasn't picked up on that one yet. But she is chewing a little. She's chewing a little too much. But so far, nothing has been ruined beyond repair. She has gotten into a couple of notebooks of mine because I leave notebooks everywhere. But so when I see pictures or when I see her with, like, you know, a page of lined paper hanging out of her mouth or a notebook in her mouth. I'm like, future journalist. She's a reporter at heart. She has a storyteller sensibility. So she is a little reporter. I tried very hard to think of a good like newspaper dog name, and I couldn't quite get there. It's harder for a girl. Like you can't. I didn't feel like Edit was a girl's name, but you could have like you know what I mean. It just didn't feel right. But,
Yeah.
So she is Willamette Rose, and she is here to stay. Again, if you are not watching on the YouTube, what are you doing?
Yeah,
This is where it's at.
Change over immediately, okay?
This is a sports podcast, which you know because I started by mentioning Shaedon Sharpe breaking the internet. Brenna, would you like to tell the people what you made of the dunk heard around the world? I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you know what we're talking about, but if not, context clues. We're going to explain it here in a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was not. I saw Brooke Olsendam post something along the lines of, "Where were you when Shaedon Sharpe dunked?" So I think we'll take that approach to this.
Okay, I like that. Shout out Brooke, former guest on this very podcast.
There you go. So yeah, Brooke, you know where I was at a high school doing a story shoot, and I got a text from Sean Hyken, and it just said, "Have you seen the Shaedon dunk?" And I was like, "No, I'm out on a shoot right now." He sent me the link, and it's one of those things where I watch it and I immediately just went, like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, I don't know. If you haven't seen it, like, I don't even feel like describing it, because describing it doesn't do
you're
justice.
already on YouTube. Like, hit pause, search Shaedon Sharpe dunk against the Wizards, and then come back. You're already on YouTube. It's fine.
I'm assuming that
it's not going to hurt our feelings.
95% of the people that are listening to this have seen it. Just insane. You know it's a good dunk when Shaedon Sharpe says after the game, "Yeah, that's my best dunk in game." Because he's
had some bangers. For
yeah,
sure.
And he's not one to really say that sort of thing. So when he gives it his blessing, it means it's pretty good. I really enjoyed watching people try to get emotion out of Shaedon about the dunk. In classic Shaedon fashion, they're like, describe dunking. Like what? Like walk me through this dunk. And he was just like, "Yeah, I mean, I saw you was gonna pass, so I cheated up and I got the ball, and then there was someone jumping up, and so I just avoided him and I dunked it." Like, that's literally, like, he treated it as if it was, he knew it wasn't a normal play, but if you didn't have the context clues of him saying things like, "Yeah, it's my best dunk in game," you would probably think he thought it was rather pedestrian.
Or just that he thinks he has something better up his sleeve. So that dunk, by the way, R.I.P. Justin Champagne. Is that how you say that name? Like, I don't know how you say those guys' last name, unfortunately. I think
I'm not sure.
Champagne. We're gonna go with Justin. We're gonna stick with Justin. Pretty confident on that one.
Sure.
I covered the NBA, Brenna. I should know these things. So that dunk was represented just 2 of the 36 points he had on 13 of 26 shooting. He made 3 threes. He got to the line and made 7 free throws, 8 boards, 5 assists, and only turned the ball over 3 times. Had a steal and a block. Great all-around game from Shaedon Sharpe. Blazers won in Washington 129-121. The Wizards remain the worst team in the NBA with only 10 wins. So while you might think, wow, the Blazers are really still chasing that play-in, this was not a good team they beat. But there is an opportunity. I mean, they go to Brooklyn next. There's potentially some wins still coming. So I'm not really in on the team discussion about the Blazers and like what these wins mean. I think we've kind of established all that. So what I want to see over these final, quick math, 23 games is I want to see Shaedon Sharpe. I want to see Scoot Henderson. I want to see the guys who I'm still not totally sure about find rhythm and go into the offseason with some real momentum. And so Shaedon Sharpe having a big game I think Blazer fans would always take that. I had a friend who texted me last night, listener to this podcast, shout out Dave, that the Blazers are 5-0 when Shaedon Sharpe scores, I believe it was 28 or more points this year. I don't know exactly what to derive from that stat because on one hand, I'm like, 5 28-point games doesn't feel that high for somebody who you think could be the future of the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And also like, a big game from a guy who's not necessarily your go-to scorer on a nightly basis means that things are going right. But so I don't necessarily think that means like, oh, they need to feed Shaedon more because there's still a lot of growth and development and decision making that has to improve and kind of occur. But I do think it was encouraging. Beyond the dunk, you love to see a game like that from a guy who has been inconsistent. Like, I mean, kind of the classic consistently inconsistent player for the Blazers. So, let's see what he does next, right? This is kind of where you would see Shaedon Sharpe have 36, 8, and 5. Number one play on SportsCenter. I didn't watch SportsCenter. I assume it was the number one play on SportsCenter because, again,
I would hope
was
so.
a banger. But what does he do against Brooklyn? What does he do against the Cavs this weekend? I mean, that's a real matchup. That's a real NBA team. The number of people I've talked to this year who are like, "Have you seen the Wizards? Woof, that's the worst team I've ever seen." So I'm trying to keep that in perspective, but let's hope Shaedon Sharpe can use this as a springboard. By the way, Denny Advia, quad contusion in this game. You probably thought he was going to go for 30 against his former team, first time back in the district. He ends up not playing a ton and leaves the game. So we generally don't get into like single game breakdowns on this podcast, but
especially really against 10-win teams.
It's really fresh, and it was there were notable things that happened. So, and that's Blazers talk, Brenna.
And that's Blazers talk. They are on an absolute odyssey of a road trip right now.
It goes forever. Like I was trying to get to one of the last because they opened the second half of the season, post All-Star break with a couple of games at home. They had the Lakers, and then on Saturday they had another game. And schedule-wise, I just couldn't get to either of them. And I was like, well, I'll just catch them when they're home again, like thinking like next week.
I know, right?
Like and then I looked at the schedule, and it's like, is it a 7-game trip? I'd have to look at it again.
Yes, it's a 7-game trip over 9,000 miles.
I would walk 9,000 miles, and I'm
so glad I triggered this for you.
More. Okay, so we are recording on Thursday morning. People are going to be listening to this at their leisure, so obviously that timing is important. But the other game that was on my radar last night was Oregon State against San Francisco, the Dons. Before we get into what happened in Corvallis, I was reminded of a really great anecdote that I discovered a few years ago that I think is worth sharing. I put it on Blue Sky last night. If you're not following me on Blue Sky, get over there. It was billoram.bsky.com. Is that how that goes? You can find me. A few years ago, I wrote about Elgin Baylor for The Athletic. And we're doing a top 75 countdown, the 75 greatest players for the 75th anniversary of the NBA. That has since been expanded to 100, and The Athletic anthologized it. You can find it in bookstores, the Basketball 100. I have a few of those in there. But one of the ones I wrote was about Elgin Baylor. So I was reading his autobiography called Hang Time by Alan Eisenstock. And people probably know that Elgin Baylor played at Seattle University, had a great journey for how he got there, played at the College of Idaho, and then went to Seattle University. He's from Washington, D.C. But in 1956, Seattle U made the NCAA tournament, and in the Far West region was assigned to the Corvallis region, at what we now know as Gill Coliseum. San Francisco was also in that region. And Brenna, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you know who was playing for the University of San Francisco in 1956?
Bill Russell.
Correct. Bill Russell was on that team. And so
I know my WCC knowledge.
You do. I shouldn't have had any doubts.
Yes.
And Bill Russell was a megastar at that point, for those times. And Elgin Baylor, was a star, but not to that level. And he had never met Bill Russell. So they're staying in the same Corvallis hotel room. And I don't have the autobiography. I was looking for it this morning. So some of these details might elude me. But he bribed a bellhop. A bellhop recognized him from magazine covers. He recognized Elgin from magazine covers. And Elgin gave this bellboy an autograph in exchange for Bill Russell's room number. And so Elgin Baylor, who had never met Bill Russell, like went up to his door, knocked on the door. Bill Russell opens, introduces himself, invites him in. He obviously knew who Elgin was.
Yeah.
And they stayed up the whole night talking about about a lot of stuff, like being young black men in basketball, about trying to make it to the NBA. Obviously, they were both going to be in the NBA, and they ended up playing each other in the finals like 9 times. And obviously Bill Russell won all those, and Elgin only got his ring after he retired, which is its own story. But it really just is one of those like great little wrinkles of history that those two absolute icons, especially of that era, like first crossed paths and first met in a hotel room in Corvallis, Oregon. Like you would never.
I'm very much enjoying this history lesson. Continue.
It's just really cool, and I found that to be very random, but also just like, I don't know, like I just really enjoyed that like connection to something, like a moment that you wouldn't never think of, right? Like when did Elgin Baylor and Bill Russell first meet? Well, it was probably at the location of your favorite Dutch brothers, like where your favorite Dutch brothers is now. So I thought that was really cool. It's also a really good autobiography, and I don't know like how many people are out reading now deceased Hall of Famers autobiographies, but I really do recommend that one. It was really well done. Alan Eisenstock was the co-author on that and did a great job. So that's my history lesson. San Francisco was back in Corvallis. Sans Bill Russell. No Seattle. Oh, by the way, those teams did not meet, by the way, in the Corvallis Regional. Bill Russell and Elgin Baylor did not play because Seattle was eliminated by Utah. So, and in the autobiography, Elgin talks about being crushed that he didn't get the opportunity to play against Russell in that regional, in that NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So last night, San Francisco in Corvallis again, playing the Beavers. WCC regular season is wrapping up. This was just a big game for Oregon State, and they end up losing on a last second play. San Francisco hits a 3, right?
Yeah, they hit
a
rainbow of a 3.
Right. So Oregon State takes a lead. There was a great bucket to go up by 1 by Isaiah C. And then San Francisco answers. There's 3.3 seconds left on the clock. And the Beavers end up losing on just a millisecond sort of issue because Parsifala has a nifty reverse layup that he misses. That's a bucket that Parsifala, if you've watched the Beavers, makes all the time. That guy has incredible footwork, is money around the rim, ends up missing. Rebound comes back to him. He tosses it back up, and they review it. It was right after the buzzer. Like just, a half a second, maybe.
Yeah.
And what's
I knew when it came out of his hands, though, he didn't get it.
I didn't know. I wasn't as sure.
Yeah,
in real
I was
time.
pretty sure.
On the review, it's obviously crystal clear. In real time, I wasn't totally sure.
Yeah.
But so fine, no basket. Beavers lose. 2 interesting things. Well, there's a lot of interesting things. Wayne Tinkle calls the timeout after they bring the ball up. They didn't use the timeout until they got the ball across midcourt. Wayne was adamant on the court that there should have been more time on the clock. Off the top of my head, I think there were 3.3 seconds left, and Wayne was like, I wouldn't say he was going ballistic, but he was strongly arguing there should be more time on the clock. Officials say no more time. If they had said instead of 3.3 seconds, there's 3.5 seconds, Beavers in San Francisco are going to overtime.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to add enough time back, like that it was going to change like their approach to how they used that time. Like that was the play was the play. So I thought that was sort of a little bit of salt in the wound. But bigger picture, Oregon State has 20 wins. They, have had, this is their best season since obviously the Elite 8 run. There has been pressure on Wayne Tinkle really ever since that 3-win team after the Elite 8. But the understanding that everyone has is that his contract, has made it, difficult to buy out. There's just been like this, and like I'm a Wayne Tinkle fan and believer. Like I think he does a good job with what he has down there. But I also think that coaches do have a life cycle. And I think that this team has been really enjoyable to watch. And so I don't really think that he's at risk of being
No, I don't think so.
bought out after the year they've had. But also, last night was the kind of game where it's like, I feel like you really got to have it. My puppy just disappeared. I'm going to listen to you through my headphones while you talk, because this is my life now as a podcaster with a puppy. So a pupcaster. I'll be back. I'll be listening. And I'll respond when I get back. So if you're watching on YouTube, that's why I'm disappearing.
Goodbye, Bill. I'll talk to our fine listeners now. Yeah, I mean, what Wayne has done this season with the exodus that happened last offseason has been pretty impressive, relative to what went down in the offseason. So I don't see him getting let go between that and the fact that, as you have stated, there are some financial restrictions going on there with that contract in a university right now that is not exactly
flush,
raking in money.
Yeah.
So, as you can tell, listeners, Bill is back with a dog in tow. So
we're gonna work on the crate training next.
I don't think that he is gonna be let go or anything like that. I mean, at this point, we all knew that this is not a team that is going to the NCAA tournament. And that's been kind of the writing on the wall for a month and a half, unfortunately. I mean,
They can't win on the road. They've been just brutal on the road.
Brutal.
And, losing to Loyola Marymount on the road, you can't do that. They lost to San Francisco, obviously. I mean, the Dons
right after
are
they
good.
beat Gonzaga.
Right. The Dons are a 7-loss team. Like, so that would I don't do the math on that. 22-7 now, something like that. That would have been I don't know, not to sound like the true stat nerds, but that would have been a quad 2 win for the Beavs. Yeah, that would have been probably a quad 2. They're 60th in net. So at home, I don't know this stuff that well.
Yeah.
So that would have been a really solid win for Oregon State. Like, obviously, I don't know how much that matters for the Beavers, just because they aren't going to have the resume to get in an at-large bid, even with that. Even if they had one, like, their only path to the NCAA tournament would be winning the WCC tournament, which I don't see happening. Although the WCC is more open on the men's side than you would normally expect.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, St. Mary's is going to win.
Yeah.
But, like, the fact that Gonzaga is not just, like, pressing its thumb on the conference in the way that it traditionally does makes it more open than normal. But yes, one of the two traditional dominant teams is still dominating. Yes.
The women's tournament, much more interesting than the men's tournament.
No, it's not. The Pilots are going to win. The Pilots always win. Like, this is the new normal. The Pilots dominate the WCC tournament. It doesn't matter what happens in the regular season. They could be 0-30. Well, they wouldn't get into the WCC tournament if they were 0-30, right? But they could be 0-30 and win the WCC
Everybody
tournament.
gets into the WCC tournament.
The WCC gets everybody in? Okay. Then they would dominate the tournament if they're 0-30. That is what I've learned about Mike Meek's team in my time here.
Okay. Well, I mean,
and this is a good Pilots team too. So the Pilots are going to
I'll say this. I've been there every season that they've won it.
Come here, puppy. Come here, puppy.
And
Willa,
you're trying to get a puppy. I got a cat on my lap now. This is a really animal-friendly podcast.
That is
we're
so
a mess as a group.
What is your cat's name? Why do I not know this?
Sequoia, named
after the great redwoods.
Yes, his litter for the ASPCA was named after trees, and I just kept it. I liked it. I thought it was a unique name for a boy, and you know what? It ended up being extremely apt because he is a large cat. He's like 15 pounds.
No, don't go in there. Don't go in there, puppy. The other So the other men's basketball team that I would like to bring our attention to is the mighty Oregon Ducks, the Webwoods, who
you don't want to talk about Portland State or Portland?
Well, I will say about Portland
That's
State.
neat of me to say.
Portland State's in really good position in the Big Sky.
That's
Like, I don't know
great.
if you've been following their situation, but they've got a big game this weekend against Montana,
Mm-hmm.
happening at the Viking Pavilion in downtown Portland. And that's a game for, really important for seeding in the Big Sky tournament. This Vikings team has been pretty solid. So I would not discourage anybody from paying attention to what happens on Saturday in the Big Sky. And if you're in
I'll
Portland,
give the
go
UP
check out
men
the Vikes.
this. They've been playing pretty well the last few weeks. Anyways, we've given both of our truly local teams their flowers. Now let's talk about the team that's going to the NCAA tournament.
So the Oregon men, after losing 5 games in a row, are we going potty over there? Nope, there you are. Oops, you're all over the place. It's like trying to trace like a bumblebee. Like, she's everywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
She doesn't just want, like, when we got her, like, she just sat in our laps like for hours and hours and hours. And now she doesn't. Okay, the Oregon men have won 4 games in a row. Amazing comeback at Wisconsin. This team is really battle tested. Obviously has great resolve. Like, a lot of comeback wins this year on the road in the Big Ten. Penn State comes to mind. I'm kind of in on the Ducks making a run in March. I have to go find my puppy again, but I'm going to listen to you, and I'll be back in a moment with my puppy.
Sounds good. Really, if you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out, because I just went through a whole battle with my cat, basically trying to knock my microphone out of my hands. So, we're both just going through it today. Yes, you. He's looking at me like, wait, are you talking about me? So, yeah, I can understand that. They're gonna be in a difficult position, I would say, in terms of seeding. Unless they make a really deep run in the Big Ten tournament, which, they might. But they're going to be at a disadvantage because of their losing streak that they went on. So that is something that does resonate with me. Now, last year, they would not have gone to the tournament without winning.
They were barely on our radar last year. I mean, obviously,
the Pac-12 tournament, and they still got to the Sweet 16. So, or no, they lost in the round of 32.
Yeah, they lost in the round of 32 to
yes, you're correct.
Creighton in overtime.
Yes. Oh, I remember that game very well. I was sitting in the Corvallis Buffalo Wild Wings, a really interesting place to take in an Oregon round of 32 game.
You know what's funny about that? I watched the round of 60. I watched their first round game in that Buffalo Wild Wings. It was after like a media availability for the Oregon State women for their regional, regional. Their, what do we call it? Their first round games, first and second round
games. Yeah.
And I went with Nick Dashel to have lunch at B-Dubs, write our stories, and watch the Oregon men beat South Carolina and Jermaine Couisnard go on an absolute heater. So that place, favored by Portland media members, apparently.
It's an easy place to eat in Corvallis. I don't know what else to say.
It's a little wild. The wings, they're pretty wild.
Just like the dog you're currently corralling.
Come here. I should name her Buffy. She already has a name. Buffy. Relax. Can you just relax?
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not that as much of a believer as you are. Let's put it that way.
I don't know what I mean. Like, when I say I think
they're a very
streaky
team.
I think they could get to the Sweet 16. Like, I mean, I would not be surprised if this is a Sweet 16 team.
Yeah, okay, I could see that.
Depending on matchups and how it goes, obviously. Yeah. But like, I mean, they're big. I think they're pretty deep, and it must be said, Jackson Shelstad, like,
killer,
has absolute stones. Like, that dude is a hell of a clutch player, and I mean, he's obviously a really good player, but like, he is at his best in the final 3 minutes of a game, and like, you just can't teach that. Like, there's just not there's not a drill for that, and like, the fact that he is able to rise in those moments and like bail his team out time and time again, like, that screams NCAA tournament to me. Like, it just feels like he's going to have, and maybe it's not this year, maybe it's next year. I mean, but he's going to have an NCAA tournament moment in his career at Oregon, I believe, because he's made for March.
Yeah, no, I definitely could see him becoming an NCAA tournament like darling this year.
Icon.
Because he's also not somebody who, like, you look at him and it's like, oh, that's a basketball player.
Right.
So he has this approachability that I think people would really identify with and enjoy. So, I think that's a good thing to look out for.
Man, you're so excited by this that it's putting you to sleep.
So excited by this. You're battling a dog. I'm battling a cat. I have no idea how we're getting this together, how we're getting our lives together, but we're doing it. I'm on 4 hours of sleep. I still haven't fully packed for a bachelorette party. We're surviving as a podcast right now, guys, and that is all we are doing.
Yeah, but I think we're bringing the heat. I think this is one of our best episodes yet.
Well, I mean, obviously, we raise the bar every time. So
interesting. Oregon men, interesting to keep watching. The Oregon women, obviously, keeping themselves in the mix. Here's the last thing I want to touch on. I think I have two more topics, if you'll indulge me, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on either of them. You spend more time in high school gyms, and at high school sporting events than I do, and frankly, like, you make it to more events than I do in general. What is your view on the state of sportsmanship in sports?
I had a very interesting conversation last night, kind of about this, actually. And it didn't have anything to do with anything that had happened this year. But I was to keep names out of it. Basically, I talked to a coach last night who told me that sometime in the last few years, he had to make his team do lines at practice and make his team practice a handshake line because things were just kind of getting a little out of hand. And I have not been to a high school basketball game yet this year, actually. Yeah, I have not. I'm trying to think. I'm like, have I been there? Been to one? No. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. I have been to, obviously high school football games in the last year. I go to one every single Friday during high school football season. It's and by the way, it's not just the kids that have issues. From what I've heard, there are coaches that have issues as well. And you don't even get into the stands. But I don't know. Why are you asking me this question? I would love to hear why you're asking me this question.
So my son Teddy plays on a basketball team, a third grade basketball team, and had a game last week where the sportsmanship by the opposing team was really poor. And notably a couple of players. And we're talking about third graders here, so I'm not trying to shame a particular player. And I think that, I hope this is a teachable moment. But it was just a lot of like YouTube, TikTok type stuff. Like, the kid was doing, the John Cena can't see me. He was like, mean mugging. He was calling our players soft. He was, unfortunately, he was also being too aggressive. Like, aggression in basketball is great, but like, repeatedly elbowing, your defender in the chest, is not. And like, it was just, I just haven't seen a lot of that, and I realize it's only going to get worse as we get older. The thing, and the referees were in no way equipped to manage the game that was unfolding. Like, these are refs who expect to be, kind of like teaching the game a little bit as you go along. Like, just call fouls. Like, you just need to kind of like keep the the decorum, the wheels on the tracks. They were in no way prepared for what was actually unfolding, and it was so frustrating because the opposing coach, who was a parent of a player on the team, of course, right, it's youth sports, did not seem to grasp what was happening, and I just it led to a kind of ugly scene. Like we had parents yelling, notably me, which is against the rules. But I was really concerned for the safety of the kids. One of our parents actually walked onto the court at a timeout to talk to the refs about what was happening in terms of the sportsmanship and the fact this kid was like, making faces at parents on our sideline, and not me. Like, he was like, looking over and being like, yeah, what's up now type thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, where are we getting this? And like, how do we fix it? And how does it come back the other way? And I don't know that it does. And I do love what the organization we're part of, they do a sportsmanship pledge for the kids before the game, and then they come over and they do a sportsmanship pledge for the parents. And I think that's terrific. I admit I was in violation of the pledge last weekend. I just don't know. I guess I just don't know where it goes from here. And I'm just interested in this as a topic, player behavior, parent behavior. I mean, this is a tale as old as time, but you see the issue with the parent in Seattle, the hockey dad who went onto the ice and shoved the referees of his kids' game, who were also like, one of them was 12, shoves them. And like, I just think that you can't really put the toothpaste back in the tube, but we have, I feel like, sort of lost the rope a little bit when it comes to sportsmanship, both from the stands and on the court. Like, I don't object when I see like an NBA player taunt a little bit, or like LeBron, who is arguably the greatest player of all time. Not what I would argue probably, but arguably has a case. Every time he scores a tough basket, he does something that I would never want to see my kid do on a basketball court. Whether it's he does the thing where it's like he always does the shoulder thing, like, I'm so strong, like, and he is. But like, it doesn't offend me when LeBron James does it, but my kid is watching, and I just don't know how to convey. I mean, I wish my kid would watch more sports, but that's for another time. I don't know how to convey, like, when you make the NBA, you can do that. Yeah. But seeing this trickle down to, the youth level, and that becomes like part of your game. I think it is it's just really unfortunate. And so that's why I was curious how much of that you were seeing out there in the streets. And thank you for letting me get this off my chest. I will say, Portland Parks and Rec, I did write a letter, and they were extremely receptive and responsive. And I would say I had a good experience with them trying to nip it in the bud. Your face right now is like you wrote a letter, like you're that parent. I was that parent, but like I really, it's about the kids.
No, I was not making a you wrote a letter face. I think I was making a I'm on 4 hours of sleep face. So no, I don't. Hey, I like someone who takes action. That's great.
I want the referees to be prepared for a situation like that, because like the other piece of this is that our team is undefeated, that team was undefeated, so I think there were some emotions about the fact that someone was going to have to lose.
Yeah,
it wasn't us, by the way.
Oh yeah, you do the shoulders.
Okay, last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here, get you on an airplane. I didn't make it downtown yesterday for the announcement, but Portland State is going to play a ball game next year back at Providence Park for the first time in 7 years. I'm not only bringing this up because that game will be against the Montana Grizzlies, but because I think it is a good move by new AD Matt Billings. Matt Billings replaced John Johnson. He's a longtime administrator at Portland State, left, came back to work for John Johnson and JJ, and was elevated to the position. I think it's a small step, and I hope it is a sign of more to come. I do not buy that having a game there or even one game a year is going to get people to buy in on Portland State football.
Yeah.
But I am encouraged that they got this done, that the Vikings are having productive conversations and productive positive outcomes from conversations with the Timbers, because I don't think that has always been an easy relationship, obviously. So I'm glad that things are trending back in that direction. I would obviously love to see PSU there for every game, or to have a downtown stadium. Like, this is not a new stance. The Vikings need to be playing downtown.
Yeah,
And,
Hillsboro's ridiculous.
And Tyson Alger, who does a lot of work for us and does a great job on the I-5 corridor, talked to Bruce Barnum yesterday, who repeated something he said to me, and he's maybe even said on this podcast, because he's another former podcast guest on this podcast. But when he brings recruits in, a lot of times he doesn't even take them to the stadium because they kind of know the deal, and there's no point in driving out there. So It's not a selling point. And granted, my perspective is different. I went to Montana, which has a huge football culture and a 30,000 seat stadium on campus, which is a huge selling point.
Yes.
So my Big Sky Conference perspective is obviously different.
Yes.
But I do feel that with Portland State, there is kind of a question of, like, why do you have football? Like, it's not, you're not making money.
No.
You are not, you're not really
the most notable thing out of their program last year was that the entire team got sick.
Yeah, and had a game canceled.
Yeah. I forget what it was that they got, but it was something ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. They didn't catch South Dakota. It was against a team from South Dakota, if memory serves correctly.
It might be. I think it was the South Dakota Coyote. I forget. Yeah.
Not the South Dakota State Jackrabbits?
No, it was not them.
Multi-time defending champions. And this is not a Portland State should get rid of football, lecture. I don't think that's the case. I think you need to figure out how to, and I had a great conversation with Matt Billings back in November, and I never wrote about it, but I think he has creative ideas. I think he is a sharp guy. I think he's obviously super well intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The question really is, can anybody succeed in that job? And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I don't think the status quo can be success. And so
no.
But again, like, who's going to step up and say, I will fund a stadium for Portland State downtown? Like, I will, because there's a version of this. Like, they could have a multi-use stadium on campus at that Stott field where they practice. Like, there are plans for a stadium where they basically put it in perpendicular to where the field currently is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they could do a 10,000 seat stadium there. Maybe it's a little smaller than that. How great would that be? How great would a Saturday in downtown Portland in October, where you walk from the Saturday market down to the football game, be? Like, I understand that, like, on most Saturdays, everybody's going to be going to either Corvallis. Everybody who wants to go to a football game probably already has somewhere to be. But, like, I would take my kids to games at Portland State because it's close, because it's easy. Like, if I was not at work on Saturdays, I would be taking my kids to football games at Lewis and Clark, which is relatively close to where I live, because it's close and it's easy and it's a good experience for the kids, because the kids don't care. So, like, I think Portland State, which talks all the time about wanting to be part of, like, the revitalization of downtown, needs to figure out how to plant its flag in downtown from a football perspective. The Viking Pavilion, where the basketball teams play, is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. It is the nicest basketball venue in the city, if not the state. It is a spectacular venue.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what the football equivalent of that could be.
I think my thought when I saw this announcement, well, I have multiple thoughts. My first thought was, if you want to put a game downtown, because it's not like everyone around here is like, Big Sky football aficionados.
Yeah, I accept that.
Maybe don't put it against one of traditionally the best teams in the Big Sky.
See, I disagree.
Okay.
And so the carve out I would have here is, you don't want to play a game at the stadium and only have 3,000 people there.
Yes.
So if you do it against Montana, and I understand, listen, there's going to be more Montana fans out there than there are going to be Portland State fans. And that had to be a consideration, and maybe it's a little bit of like not a great look. I do accept that, but you want butts in the seats. You want people seeing Portland State football. You want people seeing your product. And so I think you accept the fact that a lot of the fans that are there are going to be Montana fans, just to put butts in the seats. Also, like, you probably, to make the deal with the Timbers, like, it's like the Timbers aren't going to, like, have all their vendors there and blah, 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 and all the stuff that goes into that deal if you're going to use up their resources and only have 2,000 people there.
That's fair. That's a point I will accept. First of all, are there that many Montana football fans around here?
I think Montana fans will travel. Like, I don't know. I mean,
to Portland?
Yeah. And there's a huge alumni base here. I think that they will travel from miles around. But I mean, people in Montana already drive like 10 hours every Saturday to go to a Montana football game. Like, it's just part of the culture. I mean, you know this, obviously. But
yes.
So I think if you are a Montana fan in Seattle, for example,
why would you just go to Missoula instead?
Because I think there's a novelty to a game in downtown Portland.
Okay.
Like, the Grizz are excited. The Grizz can market it. Like, I'll be curious to see. And I think I saw that Tyson wrote that, that
mark me as a hater.
That 10,000 fans being there would not be a success. They want more. I don't know if they're going to get like 20,000 people. That seems very hard to imagine. But if you got 10,000 people there, I think that'd be terrific. Like, when was the last time there were 10,000 people at a Portland State football game?
I guess my thought is this.
It certainly was when they last played in the stadium and had a good team.
And as always, when I say these sort of things, I would love to be wrong. But the odds would tell you that the spread on that game is going to be generous towards Montana in that situation. And so then you are putting a product out there in front of people who maybe don't watch your program as much. And it's going to be, it could end up being a situation where it's a blowout. And then everybody's impression of your team is the team that got blown out. And so that is something that goes into my mind.
I think that's fair. I think that is fair. But I think I would still rather see Portland State get blown out at Providence Park than not be at Providence Park.
Okay.
I mean, I think that would just, I mean, I think ideally you'd want to play a good team and win, obviously. But, I mean, they've got 9 months to figure that out. Okay, Matt Billings scheduled the game, or got the game got the game in the stadium, which everybody wants. Now go get a team. Like, Barney's got spring ball. There's another run of the transfer portal.
Now go get a team?
Yeah.
Oh, like it's that easy.
No, I'm just saying, like, now it's Barney's job to coach a team that is going to be competitive in that game.
When has he done that recently? I'm sorry.
I mean, listen, the Vikings are not I'm not trying to say that this is a championship level football program, but Barney has done reasonably well with, like, they have been competitive.
His contract was up this year.
Yes.
Do you think he deserved a contract extension?
I'm going to push this to another podcast. I think it is a complicated question. I would have been fine either. I think fine. I was fine either way.
Okay.
Like, I actually probably would have moved on, to answer your question.
I mean,
but I also do feel that that is a difficult job. It's not to say that nobody could do it. I think he has done a lot of things really well, and his teams, like, are competitive. Like, and he is. I mean, didn't they beat another did they beat an FCS team this last year or not? I feel like they did.
Wait, an FCS team?
No, an FBS.
FBS?
Yeah.
No.
Hold on, I just need to look at what happened last year.
Now we're both doing the fun little. Okay, what has happened in this? Because I had it in my brain of.
Oh wow, they were bad this year. Okay, they were worse this year than I remembered.
I mean, they had a game that kind of got stolen from them.
The South Dakota game that they didn't play, or
no, there was a game where there was some issues at the goal line right as time expired. Yada yada yada.
Must have been the UC Davis game because that was 27-26.
Yeah.
Davis was good. Okay.
So
well,
yeah,
this is more Portland State, like state of the football program than we have time for.
Agreed.
They were worse last year than I realized. They only had 3 wins, so I stand moderately corrected on that.
Yeah, I would need to. I had it a few months ago in the back of my brain the last time they had a winning record.
Yeah,
but I can tell you it's been at least 7 years.
I agree. I understand. I think there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
I think also you are not just competing against, your schedule, you're also competing against expectations, which are very low. All right. On this uplifting note, I'm excited for the game. This is where I'm going to leave it. I'm excited for the game at the stadium. I'm glad they're back there. Good work, Matt Billings. Bruce Barnum, good luck. Can we agree on all those things?
I think ultimately it doesn't do much for me considering the trajectory of the program over the last half a decade. Okay. So I think that there's just bigger fish to fry right now. And,
I agree.
And so
you mean within the Portland State Athletic Department?
Well, I mean, no.
Or in sports, in the sports landscape?
No, I was saying in the Portland State football program.
Yeah. Okay.
So, it's a nice gesture, but I'm ultimately a bit dubious about a few things. And like I said, I am, and when it comes to that situation in particular, I am dubious about the impression that they could give, and therefore it could end up not being as successful as they hope it could be, and could end up becoming a situation where everyone's like, all right, same team.
I don't know that anybody going to that game, if this is a typical Portland State football team, is going in,
thinking they're going to win,
pinning their experience on whether Portland State wins or loses.
Yep, that's fair too.
Brenna, I love that we do this. I don't know where my puppy is. She's been gone for the last 15 minutes. I don't know what I'm going to find when I go upstairs in my house. So I need to go.
Godspeed, my friend.
This has been the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you for sticking with us through our various animal issues in our respective households. We'll be back next week with more stories from the Oregon sports landscape. For Brenna Greene, I am Bill Oram. I'm sorry. Thank you for listening.